Rachel Chandler, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Such a pleasure. It's so lovely to have you. We've known each other through an online community Bhakti club run by Katie Rose for some time. And it's just, we've not met in person, but every time I speak with you, it's like speaking with a sister and a friend. So thank you for just being you and for being here with us.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's genuinely an honor to be involved and yeah, really happy to be here.
Of
And for
course.
us to be able to have this conversation in person, we've been trying to sort of get there for a little while and now here we are, we've connected in person. So yeah, it's
Yeah, I
lovely.
think you and I were both, we've been sort of working away in our humble ways as activists in our communities and our online spaces, and at times it can feel isolated or lonely, and so we've been messaging each other occasionally and having these conversations in our DMs, and so now we take it into a broader community.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's do it. The first question I want to ask you is, can you explain what mutual aid is?
Yeah. So I have been thinking a lot about this and really the way that I see it is as sort of a new name for a very old way of being. You know, it's really returning to this relationship and connection with each other, with the planet, with the seasons, the cycles. You know, it's this deep relational um, way of being, as opposed to our current social structure of, you know, I'm a trained coach for mothers, and we sort of talk about this current structure being about profit, productivity, and um, power. Yeah. So that's kind of the structure that we're all living within at the moment. And if we go back to this time of power with rather than power over, what's possible with that? You know, it really becomes relational as opposed to transactional. And I would love to see us move more in that direction. And I'm not sure that that's where we're headed at the moment. But yeah, my feeling is that I'd love to see more of that.
Yes. Yeah, I totally get that. I love how you've said that it's like a new name for something which is very ancient and actually innate.
Yeah.
And it's really just reconnecting with that. It's funny even that we need to give it a new name, that we even need it to, it's like we're giving it a brand, like how very, how very us, or how very
How
now
modern of us.
mutual aid. Yeah, for me, it's like, again, to use a buzzword, which is kind of a current way of labeling something which is ancient, is the grassroots of it. So for me, mutual aid is like a grassroots person to person exchange, which is actually about being in genuine community rather than rather than there being a disconnect. I think from a financial perspective, when we think about you know, like giving financially to worthy causes, there's always like, you give your donation and you get a tax receipt and the exchange is complete, and you don't necessarily have any contact with the beneficiary, or and or any kind of direct understanding of exactly what your money is doing. Whereas with mutual aid, it's like recognizing a genuine personal need that an individual or a group of people, a family, has, and being like, yeah, here you go, and understanding also that that may be reciprocal. um
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think that's the difference between charity, which can still sort of have a bit of a hierarchy to it, and mutual aid. And, you know, we read Secrets of Divine Love as part of Bhakti Club.
Yeah.
And I really took away from that. She talks about this zakat. I don't know if I've pronounced that right, but it's this idea that there's like a blessings tax. So, you know, you come from a place of, look at all these things that I have and where can I contribute from that? So I've already received, you know, when we're talking about reciprocity,
Mm.
already received all of these amazing blessings. And where can I then contribute back to someone, create some more balance and harmony within your own community, or, there's so many ways that we can do that in ways that are really accessible to all of us.
Yes.
Depending on what, and it doesn't have to be financial. It can be time. It can be, I was really surprised. I recently signed up for my daughter's P&C committee. And that has 700 students, and there would have been probably not even 10 parents there. And I think, we're busy. We are, that's my neighbour's son knocking on the door.
I can't hear it.
Yeah. I get that people are busy, but it's just really obvious that we're missing that sense of community involvement, and really, just a sec. Hey, bud, they're not here, hon. They're not home.
And as you speak, and as you're talking to your dear neighbour's son, I can hear my husband and son in the other room building Lego. And that's the life we lead, isn't it, as mums? We sneak off for a Zoom, knowing that life continues around us.
I thought I was all sorted with Granny having the kids, but it's just the way it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's my neighbour messaging me this afternoon saying, we've got a gap between her and her partner working on this day in the school holidays. Can you have their son for that period? And, it is that being in community, looking for opportunities where you can contribute in really beautiful, simple ways.
And to pick up on what you said about busyness, I mean, in many ways, like, we are busy because that's the system we live in, but also we're busy because we're doing so much on our own. Whereas if we were able to lean into like genuine sort of scaffolding and community support, then the burden is lifted somewhat. School pickups are shared, meal times are more communal, and things are. I guess there is like a genuine sense of community, and a mutual recognition of meeting each other's needs and not going it alone, and not thinking that everyone else has to go it alone either. I can help here because I have capacity, because I'm supported in other ways as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, you have been an amplifier, or you are currently still an amplifier for a Palestinian family. Can you tell us like what that means? What does that involve? And also talk to some of the wonderful things and also the challenging things you've found as of being part of that.
Yeah, so I met Rowan and O'Day through an Australian. I think they're not all in Australia, but a group called Copies for Gaza. And I had met one of their organisers through the fundraise that I was involved with Katie earlier in the year, to raise money for Doctors Without Borders, Gaza Appeal. And, it's just the magic of the way that we all kind of weave in and connect with each other. So I was following this group that Rebecca was involved with, and found out about Rowan and O'Day's situation. So they were married on the 6th of October. Then there was what happened on the 7th of October with Hamas in Israel, and then they lost their home. They lost everything. They lost their dental practice. They're both dentists, and were displaced multiple times. So I really we were just in touch with each other via Instagram, and built up this friendship with her. And I work a lot with mothers, and she was a expecting mother, and I just really, they're just the most beautiful people, they're just it's a gift to know them. And just they're the best, the best of the best. You know, just they're inspiring, their resilience, and their, you know, just kind hearts. They actually started a thing called I'm having a mental blank, but basically started up a tent where they were able to provide dental care for kids in the camp, and that was something they provided free. And I just I'm constantly amazed by their generosity and their resilience despite everything that they've lost. And they're just beautiful. So to know them is a gift. Yeah. So that's just
beautiful. And so
yeah.
what do you do for them?
I mean, the main thing I do is probably have a relationship with them. I check and see how they're doing. We talk about our so Rowan and O'Day had a baby 3 months ago. So really just through the process, how are you? You know, where are things at? What's happening? I share the work that they're doing with the dental tent. I contribute myself financially from time to time where I can, and encourage others to do that if they're in a position to, but to also, you know, follow them on Instagram, connect with them, and show them that they're not alone, and that we see them and we see what they're having to live through every day.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I love that your first answer was having a relationship with them. Because it's so that for me, that is so much about that common humanity shared. And especially as a mother, and when Ruan was an expecting mother, you know, that experience in so many ways is the same for all women who are in that, you know, who are pregnant and then have a baby and then treasure this baby. But what they're dealing with is different, say, for example, to you or me, because they're in a situation where a genocide is literally occurring around them. And so to have a relationship says you matter, and I see you, and I can't do everything for you, but I can do something, and that means a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the challenge, of course, that comes with that is this daily care for them. So you care so much that you worry every day. So and it's really, you know, I noticed the other day I was making some muffins with my kids, and we had flour, and Rowan had sent me a message the day before with a photo of the flour that they were able to get, and of course it's full of worms and flies, and so it's like, you know, having to hold these two different, knowing what she's experiencing and knowing that here I am baking muffins with my kids, and how, you know, just such different experiences. So yeah, it's always this strange kind of space to be in. You know, I find I'll tickle my son's toes when we're driving in the car, and then I think about what's happening there, and yeah, it's a strange space.
Yeah, it's a very strange place to find yourself in constantly for so long. And then even when it feels difficult, it's like how, you know, how dare I feel like this is difficult, because it's so much more difficult for them. So it's this really, there's a lot of conflicting emotions which aren't really able to be resolved. Yeah. And so, you know, you've said that you support financially when you can, you ask others to give if they can, and you also maintain this, you know, beautiful contact that you have with them. What is it like to navigate knowing that they need more, but that you also don't have capacity to give more? And to navigate that constant sort of emotional pull of being there for your kids and bringing them joy and meeting their needs at the same time as knowing what Ruwan and, you know, so many of her fellow Palestinian people are going through. How do you hold all of that?
I mean, I just think you have to feel it. Do you know what I mean? It's like it is as I said, it's hard to be in those two different worlds. And, you know, there's through things that I've shared and work that I've done, there's lots of people that reach out needing help, and I can't help everyone individually. And I think that's, you know, when we talk about mutual aid, imagine if everyone was building relationships with people like this and sort of sharing, I don't know, sharing the responsibility, really, because, you know, I believe we have a responsibility at this time to do something, you know, do something, because it's, I don't know, I think one of the hard things for me to personally reconcile has been the lack of action to stop what's happening. And I don't know that I will ever really understand that. You know, my brain wants to make sense of it and kind of give it meaning, and how has this been able to go on for as long as it has, with no sort of indication that it's going to end anytime soon. And I don't know that we'll really get the answers to that.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's, you know, being in the not knowing and
Yeah.
being in the I can't fix this immediately is very challenging for people like us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Rachel. And so how do you deal with those situations, you know, when you might get a request from someone who is in Gaza, for example, asking you to support them and you're not able to? What do you do? How do you deal with that?
Sometimes it's really difficult. It's really difficult because they're desperate. You know, they're just absolutely desperate. And I actually sometimes can't continue the relationship or the conversation with them, if that, you know, that's just the reality of, I can't, you know, I just can't help everyone. And I hope that in my conversations with people, I show that, you know, there are people that really genuinely care about what's happening, and that I just cannot help everyone. And it's really, I mean, it's awful, it's uncomfortable, and it's just something that's just the reality. As an individual, we can't help everyone, but we can help some.
Yes, and I think that again goes back to the point that you've made, that if everyone did just a little bit, actually, that would be just this massive change. And I think that's why it's called Coffees for Gaza, the collective that you were associated with, because they just had this idea of like, what if what if everyone gave the cost of a coffee to a family in Gaza? Like that would make a massive difference. It's literally the difference between survival and death for many. Um, and even for some potential evacuation. I think that's initially they'd thought about trying
That
to
was,
help
yeah,
people leave Gaza, but then finding that that was not possible. They were just trying to help them to survive there, with things like, you know, being able to buy the exorbitantly priced food when it is available, being able to secure tents so that there's shelter in the extreme heat and the extreme cold. Just $5, $6, the cost of a coffee. You know, many of us, like, it's difficult, like that. It's not like the economic climate is all, you know, peachy at the moment, but I do believe that many of us have the capacity to spare $5 a week. And so this is where the responsibility comes on board to
yeah.
do what modest things we can.
And I actually don't think it's always about having to do something financial if you're not in a position to do that. And I think that's what you do so well, Shay, is to highlight what's happening, so to bring awareness to it. And, you know, your colouring for Gaza, I mean, that was just such a, my kids and I did that. We sent our letters off to the big wigs in Parliament, and, you know, that's a really beautiful way of using your advocacy, but it doesn't actually cost anything more than the stamp and your time, but it's really meaningful. And so yeah, I think, you know, if anyone sort of gets stuck with thinking, well, I don't have any money to contribute, there are things that we can do. And one of, you know, the very simple things that we can do is actually just witness, like start to really, really look towards what's happening. I think we're, you know, the disconnect and, you know, I know it's not nice to look at, but it's not going to get better. Like love and light is not going to solve genocide. Do you know what I mean? Like we really need to start seeing people educating themselves, looking towards what's happening and not looking, you know, all the time, because we still need to be able to function as humans. But, you know, there's a book that, you know, I was feeling very, very overwhelmed by everything at the start of the year. You know, like it's a lot to hold, and you can feel yourself sinking into these periods of what's going to make a difference. How's, you know, it's very easy to fall into that. I'm so small in this big world, and what can I actually do? And so my mum actually recommended a book called Active Hope by Joanna Macy and Chris Johnson. And so I read that at the start of the year. And I think the line on the front of that is how to face the mess we're in without going crazy. and it does that. You know, it's like really, Joanna's very much a climate activist. My mum has done retreats with her a long, long time ago. And but what I really took from that book was that we need to be sort of holding the gaze. We need to be looking at what's happening, come from a place of what we have and gratitude and the beautiful things that are in the world, and then look forward to what do we want to, like, what's our vision for the world? You know, like what do we want to be leaving for our children? You know, we've both got children. What actions are we taking in service of that sort of vision going forward? We're going to be the ancestors, you know, what legacy are we going to be leaving? And using that vision to drive your action. Does that make sense?
Yes,
so
it does.
Really, like, hold that vision, and what are the small tangible things, and perhaps big, perhaps you create something within community. But as individuals, we actually there are things that we can do, you know, so whether it's, you know, obviously really passionately care about what's happening in Palestine, but climate, you know, what are we doing to minimize our impact? And I mean, it's all sorts of things if you care about animals and whatever it may be. But I think the important thing is to use that, you know, use the feelings that we have and use it to drive action. Yeah.
And the vision is important, you know, the vision for the future and what that's going to look like, because that needs to be built. And that also means that we need to dismantle some of what we currently have that is not what we want.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when we're faced with difficulties, whether it's, you know, global warming, whether it's animal rights, whether it's multiple genocides that are happening around the world, we can be very reactive and just very, like, you know, sort of very quickly respond, like, quick share this to my story, or quick send $5 there, or whatever. And those are important actions, but rather we could hold this big picture vision of what it is that as a collective we're going to move towards. And then, you know, we can take care of ourselves within that and make really deliberate choices as to how we live our lives in a way that works towards that vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I guess in that way it's a little bit easier to hold, because it's like, this is a long game.
Yeah.
I can't fix it today. You know, what I do today only has a you know, perhaps a small impact for just one person, but collectively all of those add up, and hello future, we've built something new.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we've been led to believe that we are powerless. Do you know what I mean? And I think a lot of people feel powerless. I think, you know, it's this feeling of nothing I do is going to make a difference, or, you know, it's just too big for me. But it's not too big if all of us are doing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you.
Mm.
So you've been advocating online as well, using your Instagram and so on. And as a business person, and as also someone who I imagine has, would have a lot of your followers would be your friends and family. What has that been like for you? Because I know at times for me it can feel a little bit like I'm sort of the isolated lone voice, speaking into the abyss. Like, is anyone even seeing what I'm saying? And then there can be some fear around, like, what if I do say something that then triggers someone and they come at me about it? Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt that. I think the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. So, it got to a point for me where I was like, I am actually prepared to lose. I'm not going to be silent on this. Like, I cannot be, and I'm not going to be. So anything that I'm willing to lose it all before I lose myself. There's that saying. That's really where I got to. As I said, I cannot reconcile where we are at this time on the planet that this sort of thing is continuing to happen to this magnitude. Like, the level of colonial violence is just unimaginable. And for me, yeah, as a mother, I just cannot stay silent. And I was a few months ago, I was walking to school with my daughter, and we were talking about what's happening, and she said to me, "Mum, do all the mums and dads know?" Because sort of she sees the mums and dads as like the protectors and the people who do things and take action. Do all the mums and dads know? And I was like, look, at this point, hon, I think they do. I think they do know. And she's like, well, they have to do something. Like, they have to do something. These are kids, and they're intense, and their bombs are. There's bombs all around them, and they're getting hurt. Like, why aren't all the mums and dads doing something? And I was like, yeah. I mean, that's kind of how I feel too. Why aren't we all doing something? But I can't speak for everyone else. And as I said, I just have to speak for myself, and I have to know that I did what I could. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't do it perfectly. There's probably a lot more that I could be doing. When I see something that I can do, I do it. Yeah, I don't know. I've never been in this. Well, I was actually telling a friend at work today, when I was 11, I wrote a letter to the newspaper because the genocide in Rwanda was not okay. And that's as an 11-year-old, and that got published in the paper, and who know, but I knew then that we have to fight against that.
Yeah. I think people know what's in their hearts. But sometimes there have been many, many layers of all sorts of things put on top of that. So it's hard to access or hard to express. And what I love about kids being advocates, because they're so fierce, children, because they know so clearly what is in their hearts. And they're just like, what? This is wrong, or this is ridiculous. What do you mean there are kids that don't have enough to eat in this world, or that aren't safe? Like, they know there's no other truth. Like, that is wrong, full stop. And so I take so much energy from, from my son who's 5. He gets it. He's like, we have conversations which are age appropriate, and he's like, well, why don't we stop this?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, right on, exactly,
We're
mate.
asking.
Exactly.
Why don't we stop it? I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not simple.
Yeah. Right. And so all of us need to do the work, don't we, to live in that way, which is more communal and more from the heart and less from whatever else our influences are. What's your advice to someone, say, who hasn't yet spoken out about something they care about. So, and it doesn't have to be Palestine necessarily, although we've focused mostly on that in this conversation. But for someone who doesn't really consider themselves an activist or an advocate, what's your advice?
In terms of speaking out?
Yeah, or taking any sort of action, really. It doesn't have to be a
Well,
public declaration.
yeah, I mean, I think to find people who care about the same things that you do, because as you said, it can feel really lonely when you feel like you're the only one that cares about something. So, for me to be in community with you and Katie and other people who are sort of feel, have the same, care about the same things, that's a good place to start, because then you don't feel as alone. But I mean, you don't have to be necessarily out there sharing on social media. It can be just about sharing in conversations with people in your life. I started a new role a couple of months ago, and I was having a chat in the lunchroom today about some things that I care about. It's just like, have those conversations. And I know that it can be really scary, and we're trained as women to keep the peace. Like we really are. Don't rock the boat. Don't be too loud. Don't make other people feel uncomfortable. And it is part of that, you know, we're social. You don't want to, it's part of you don't want to be outcast. I think we've probably all experienced that at some point in our life where we've felt like we've been outcast for something we've done or said or whatever. So we sort of carry that fear in our bodies. But yeah, I don't know. I think when you really connect with what's important to you, it might just take a bit of courage.
Yeah.
It's probably still going to be uncomfortable, and it's probably still going to be a bit scary. I mean, I still share things and I'm like, oh, no, it's done. Because
Yeah.
I feel it's important to me to share it.
And is that when, you lean on your practices, like for you and I, we both practice yoga and, I'm sure we have other things that we sort of do to support ourselves. So is that where you lean on those things that support you to be connected and to, to regulate and
So yeah, one of my greatest practices is my morning shower. So that for me is a sacred time. It's like the kids don't interrupt. It is the time where I really connect in to my heart and I have a conversation with myself. I really drop into that space because, we spend a lot of time up here, and I consciously, as part of my practice, it's about rooting down into the earth and connecting with my heart space, hand on heart, hand on womb space. And it's like, what's my next step? Or, ask a question, is this what I should be doing? And I get a pretty clear answer. And I think I've practiced that for many years now, that the message that I receive is a lot clearer than it probably was at the start. But we can't necessarily trust our kids. We need to. The body gives us so much information, and can we tune into that? So yeah, that's one of my everyday practices every morning to start my day. It's
that's awesome. Especially
conversation with
because
my
you have a
heart.
shower anyway, and so
Exactly.
to intentionally use that time in which you're not with your kids and you're not having to do something else, you're going to wash your body anyway. So why not let that be a time in which you actually anchor?
Yeah.
Mm, beautiful. I just also wanted to pick up on that idea of, especially as women, we're conditioned to keep the peace, don't rock the boat. It's so interesting because that's very deliberate, of course, and
Cool.
it's only through our keeping the peace that wars are able to actually be perpetuated. And so it's like we actually need to rock the boat in order to disrupt this. It's um, keeping the peace isn't like it. That's actually a euphemism, isn't it, for just remaining silent and not speaking out.
Yeah. keeping the status quo, keeping things
Yeah,
the way
that's
they
right.
are.
And so actually we need to disrupt the so-called peace because it's a false peace.
Yeah.
Yeah, in order to then bring about genuine peace, not only to ourselves, but to the world.
Yeah. One of my teachers says, Sarah Durham Wilson, she says, the world will be saved by feminine rage. Like we need to tap into those parts of ourselves that we in our culture bury. Like we need to access, like we need to be angry about what's happening to women and children in Palestine and the men too, of course. But it's like the animals, the land. So, we need to get angry. We need to connect with that and not use it to project onto everyone, spew it out everywhere, but use it as the fire to ignite us to take some positive action. It's that, it's the active hope. Yeah. So, coming back to that, holding that vision, that hope for something that should, that needs to be better. And taking those actions towards that.
Yeah, to genuinely feel whatever those emotions are, if it's anger, if it's despair, if it's grief, take that emotion and then turn it into something, do something with it. Yeah.
We don't know how to do that really in our culture, do we, as women? That's something that we really have to, we don't know how to be with those emotions. And, I told you about my shower practice. Sometimes that is doing a silent scream in the shower, like sometimes that is letting the tears, it's really this conversation of what do I need? What do I need? And then it's like, right, silent scream, or just let the tears fall with the water, and it's allowing that, those emotions to move through us rather than burying them deep down and then we get sick.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But it's, it's not something that we really learn how to do, is that?
No, unless you find a community who's doing the work, people like yourself who are able to guide women in this, in this reconnection. Yeah. And I think, we talked to bring it right back full circle, about mutual aid being about community. Even in this online space, like we're not physically together, but we are together in this. And so it's almost like it's an experiment for those of us who are learning how to feel our emotions and then how to express them and how to turn them into something that helps the world. It's got to be a play and a trial and error and allowing ourselves to just begin somehow, anyway, anyhow.
Yeah. Little step.
Yeah.
But we've talked a lot about community, and I remember listening to a podcast which really impacted me with Rachel Rose, who I actually did her circle facilitator training, and Dr. Sophie Brock, who's another teacher whose work I've been really learnt a lot from. And Rach talks about creative community making, because we have this idea that we need to have people around us who are exactly like we are. And the reality is the village would not have had everyone the same. There is so much value in different ideas and different interests and different people. And, rather than thinking we need to look for this one type of person, really expand to and be creative about who we have in our community.
Yes, I read just recently something from Tamala J. Gordon, who's actually also part of this Bhakti Women's Summit. And she talked about the difference between a community and a clique. And a community is like everyone's in that, and where many people are very different, and where everything's like all welcome. And yes, sometimes there's disagreements and conflicts, and that's cool, like it's dealt with because it has to be. Whereas in a clique, it's like, well, everyone's just exactly the same, and it's gate kept, and it's sort of about optics. So even if you are in a clique that's supposedly, doing the work, it's a very specific type of work that looks a very specific type of way, and we can't let anyone else in to help because that would sort of ruin our vibe. So there's a big difference between a clique and a community.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
and what we want is the village, that village where it was sort of everyone was there, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. It's that, it's that power with.
Mm.
It come back to the start. We talked about the power with rather than power over.
Yes.
And yeah, rather than sort of separation, how can we be more connected and interwoven?
Mm. And
Yeah,
that is yoga as well. I mean, to bring it back to the core teachings of yoga, union, connection. It's
absolutely.
realizing that we are all the same. There is no separation, and then behaving accordingly.
Yeah,
Mm.
collaboration. There's another C word, collaboration.
We're just going to use all the C words.
I do like
What else
C
is
words.
there?
But yeah, exactly.
Well, as we came full circle, I'll end with my final question,
Yeah.
which is, what are you listening to, or what are you reading right now? Like, what are you learning?
I am reading Coming to the End of Braiding Sweetgrass, by Robin Wall. I can't remember her surname.
That's okay. I'll pop it in the notes.
Yeah, it is. It's just like poetry. Honestly, I've been. Sometimes I can get into the habit of checking my phone in the morning, and I know that that's not good for me. So I've really swapped that out for reading my book when I first get up. And it's just beautiful. I just really talks about the relationship between plants, Indigenous knowledge, and the teaching of plants. And it's just, I mean, some mornings I'm in tears because it's so beautiful to when we actually look at how connected everything is.
Mm,
It's really lovely.
yeah.
And I've actually just started listening to Wild by Sarah Wilson, that podcast. I've listened to the last 3 episodes, which I've been really enjoying. And what else am I learning? I'm a student of Sarah Durham Wilson, and I'm doing a maiden to mother teacher training. So that's all about, wow, it's all about moving from the mature feminine, from the immature feminine to the mature feminine. So patriarchal feminine that's impacted by our culture to the mature feminine.
Oh, wow. Wow, wow.
And that's been phenomenal. We have calls. I get up at 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning for those calls. Which I didn't realise the US has daylight savings. So I got up at 2 a.m. the other day, and it was actually meant to be 3 a.m. So I missed that particular call because I was like, no, going back to sleep. But that's really amazing work in a community of really women really committed to doing the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, look, there's a lot of us out there, and a lot of those people will be listening to this interview as well. So gosh, just shout out to all of the incredible people who are doing the work and who are, on this adventure. Mm. Rachel, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. It has been an absolute gift, and you are divine. Thank you.
Thank you. You are too. I'm so grateful for you.
The feeling is mutual.
Okay.
Bye bye, my love.
Bye, lovely.